welcome to my show. I'm Liz Harcharik and this is the European Palette. Today I'm taking a little trip down memory lane in both Italy and France. Now, a few years ago I worked as an apprentice for a week in a lovely restaurant in Orvieto, which is in Umbria, and every day I worked with a great chef called Vincenzo who gave me so many great tips. And every evening I went back to my inn and I ate at a long table with, 20 other guests of all different European nationalities, Italian, French, Belgian, me, British, and we had a 4-course meal which was absolutely delicious. And one evening we were given a pasta dish. Of course, every evening we had a pasta dish with a sauce that was sublime, but none of us could guess what was in it, and we all thought some sort of meat. It turned out that it was gorgonzola in a red wine sauce with a bit of tomato. Absolutely delicious. Unfortunately, I have the recipe and I'm going to show you today how to make it. And I'm going to show you how to make a sabayon, which is also known as a zabaglione in Italy. And a sabayon is a bit like a custard. It's basically hot egg yolks cooked with a little bit of wine. It's absolutely yummy, and I'm going to pour it over some red berries, and you're going to be amazed at how easy it is to make something that seems actually quite technically demanding. To start off our meal, we're going to have some sausage with some cornichons. And to accompany our pasta dish, we're going to have a green salad of mash with a shallot vinaigrette. So let's get cooking. Cooking pasta. First of all, you need a really big pot and you want to put some water. Turn your heat on to full and bring your water to a rolling boil. For a pound box of pasta, you want to have 2 or 3 teaspoons of salt. This is to season the water, which you might be using in your sauce. Okay, now we have a great rolling boil. There it is, you can hear it. Now I'm going to add my pasta to the pot, and even though some people like to have long bits of pasta, this is spaghetti, I always break it in half. The reason I break it in half is to get it all inside the pot at the same time so it cooks evenly. There we go. Now the important thing now is to stir it around so that you separate the strands as much as possible. That way they won't stick together. You really don't need to put any oil in, you just want to use a spoon. Follow the instructions on the side of your packet. It's the manufacturer's directions which are going to serve you best. If you want your pasta al dente, you're going to cook it for the shorter amount of time. Obviously, if you want it softer, you're going to cook it for the longer amount of time. So you start to time it from the minute that it comes back to a boil, as it is doing right now. And from time to time, give your pasta a little swirl, just like this. Now let's prepare the sauce for our spaghetti al gorgonzola. Now I buy my gorgonzola picante from McCaffrey's. They carry it there. You want the picante because it's not quite as smooth as the regular gorgonzola. Here it is, half a pound of gorgonzola picante. Now to prepare your cheese ahead of time, you just want to strip off the outer layers like this, the foil wrapper, and you're going to get your fingers a little bit sticky, but that's okay, they're going to taste really good. And then just slice off as thinly as possible the rind, like this. There we go. It smells delicious. There we go. And then in a bowl, you just want to mash it up with a fork. It's just going to make it easier to mix in with your sauce later. And now for our gorgonzola sauce. Now in this sauté pan I have a couple of tablespoons of olive oil heating very gently. The last thing you ever want to do is put garlic into really hot oil. It just burns and it tastes terrible. I'm going to prepare my garlic. I'm just going to peel it and cut it in half, that's all, and I'm going to put it in the oil, and that's going to flavour the oil. Actually, we're going to remove the garlic clove afterwards. Now, remember how to prepare garlic? We're going to squash the garlic with the back of our knife like this, and then remove the peel. And you can see this stem thing, this germ that's sticking out. We don't want that. We're going to remove that by cutting it in half and splitting it. There we go. That's so obvious. We're going to take that right out. And I'm going to add that immediately to my pan, and it's not going to sizzle too much because it's not too hot. The other ingredients that you're going to need is a tin of tomatoes, a cup of red wine, any kind of red wine but not the one you're going to drink, and some flakes of red pepper. There's a lovely odor of garlic coming, and one thing that I noticed when I was in Italy was how Vincenzo used to take whenever he needed tomatoes, he'd take a can of tomatoes and he would blend it. He would never use passata, which is that sort of blended tomatoes. He'd always take a can, and actually he would put his blender right into the can of tomatoes and blend it right there. I tried it once at home and it went everywhere, so I'm actually going to use the blender bowl here and add my can of tomatoes, and then use my handheld blender to mix it together. Basically, that way you're going to have a nice smooth sauce, no lumps of tomato. Now, if you look at the garlic, it's beautifully golden and it's released lovely, lovely aromas. And we're going to add the red wine, the cup of red wine, to the garlic in the pan. Now, remember, when you're adding something cold to something very hot, it's going to spit. So I would suggest you move it away from the heat and tip the oil a little bit to the side of the pan to minimize spitting. See if that works. Excellent. Now you want to turn the heat up pretty high now because you're going to let this bubble down and reduce so that you only have a few tablespoons left. That's going to really concentrate the flavors. And then we're going to take the garlic cloves out. Now our wine has reduced somewhat. It's down to, well, perhaps not 2 to 3 tablespoons, but that's fine as far as I'm concerned. I'm going to remove the garlic. I wouldn't throw this away. You can always put it in something else like a soup or a sauce. Never throw anything that tastes good away. And to this I'm going to add my tomatoes, and again I'm going to go quite slowly so it doesn't splatter. There we go. Mix that in. The smell is absolutely phenomenal, by the way. There you are, mix that in, and then we're just going to leave this to simmer for about 20 minutes. And while that is simmering away, let's prepare the green salad. And as a dressing, I'm going to make a shallot vinaigrette. I love the taste of shallots. They're a lot sweeter than onions and not quite as distinctive as garlic. And for our salad leaves today, I'm going to use a mixture of mash and other greens. Mash is also known as lamb's lettuce. It's a European leaf that's become more and more popular in the US recently, and it's very pretty. It looks like this. These little leaves here with a little bit of root, and if you put them together with some other little leaves, it makes a lovely salad. And the taste isn't too strong. It's slightly nutty, nice and fresh, so it'll really stand up to a nice vinaigrette sauce with a little bit of shallot in it. So here's a shallot, beautiful. You want to check your shallot, make sure there's no bruises or squashy bits, as I would say. Okay, and then we're going to cut it up. What I tend to do is cut it in half this way. And I'm just going to use half of my shallot today because I don't want it to be overpowering. Always good to cut on a flat surface. And then you're going to remove the outer layer, the papery skin, like this. Oops. There we go. Try to keep the root bits together like this. Otherwise it sort of splays out everywhere. And then what we're going to do is cut on horizontally first of all. And then vertically. And then across it like that. So it's actually very, very finely minced. And see how by keeping the root on right until the very end, you can keep cutting it. Be very careful to keep your fingers tucked in like that so you don't run the risk of cutting them. Okay, there we are. And then I just chop it a little finer like this. It's pretty much mincing it. There we go. Okay, now we're going to make the vinaigrette part, and I love to make my vinaigrettes with Dijon mustard. So proportions always vary according to taste, but I'll give you my tried and trusted recipe, which is a teaspoon of mustard, a couple of teaspoons of vinegar, red wine vinegar I'm using, and then about 4 teaspoons of oil, and I'm going to use grapeseed oil. Olive oil is going to get, the flavor of the olive oil is just going to get totally lost in the mustard and the shallot. So I love to use grapeseed oil actually. They carry it at Trader Joe's, grapeseed oil. And about 4 teaspoons of the grapeseed oil. And when you've got these basics, then afterwards you can play with it and get it to your desired quantities, because it is actually a very personal thing, vinaigrette. I remember when I stayed with my French pen friend in France, it was her job to make the vinaigrette, and she'd started off with an awful lot of mustard, and then she added the oil, and she whisked and whisked and whisked and made an emulsion. It was like mayonnaise. I was very impressed that a young girl of 15 was in charge of vinaigrette, but that's France. Okay, and I like to use this tiny little whisk to make my vinaigrettes. It really is very, very efficient at mixing it together, or you can use a fork, of course. And can you see I'm almost making an emulsion there? And then a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. There we go. And that's perfect. And then we're going to add our shallots. And I'm going to take that whisk out, because otherwise the shallots are going to get caught in between the wire bits there. And just pour that on top like that. I like to use this scoopy thing because then I don't have any risk to my fingers of the sharp blade. And then use that little spoon just to mix it up again. Now, if you want, you can put that in a jam jar and keep it covered in the fridge, but that's enough for a big bowl of salad for about 6 people. Okay, now no European meal is complete, or rather starts off well, if there's no aperitif. And something that I just learned to love when I was living in Lyon was Lyonnais sausage, saucisson sec, absolutely delicious. And they serve it with cornichon. Now, of course, we can't get Lyonnais sausage here in Princeton, but if you go to Trader Joe's, they have a really nice selection of sausage, and this one's called Chianti, red wine salami. So I thought that looked rather nice. And when I was there, I also picked up a jar of cornichon, which are those tiny little gherkins which come with, quite often anyway, with little cocktail onions. An absolutely delicious marriage. And I think it's pretty fun to just, when your friends are coming over, just to put out a few little nibbly things which require no effort on your behalf at all, apart from, of course, unwrapping a sausage. So here we go. Okay, now this sausage, unlike the Lyonnais sausage, comes with a very thin casing that you're going to need to peel off. The Lyonnais sausage has a really thick casing, which is kind of dusty with flour. So what they do over there is just slice it up, and everybody knows actually to take the casing off. Well, actually, when I was first in Lyon, I used to eat it because I didn't know you had to take it off. But, you know, no harm comes to you by doing that. So a few slices like that. I guarantee it'll be gone really quickly. You put that there, and then you want to have some cornichon to go with it. So try to take out just cornichon, not too much vinegar. Oh God, that's just yummy. There we go. And for the vegetarians, there's a lovely selection of mixed nuts that I also got at Trader Joe's. There's cashews and walnuts and pecans and almonds and hazelnuts. Brazil's yummy. So that's a pretty nice selection to put out for your guests. And now for the sabayon. Don't worry, this is going to be very easy to do so long as you follow the instructions. What you need is a double boiler, and you're going to start off with the water all still cold inside the bottom of your pan. Like this. Don't have it up too high. You don't want it to splash up and over your bowl. Then put your bowl inside it, and I have, you can't actually see because one of them has broken, but I have 4 egg yolks in here, and to that I'm going to add 2/3 of a cup of sugar, and I'm going to start whisking them together, but still without putting the heat on. Okay? Now, as you whisk together egg yolks and sugar, you're going to see that the color of the yellow gets paler. That's because the volume is being increased. To that I'm going to add a cup of Marsala wine. Marsala wine is a sweet fortified wine from Italy, but in fact you can buy California wine. Paul Masson makes it, and it's not terribly expensive. It's a great wine to keep in your fridge for cooking. You can add it to savory sauces as well as to dessert sauces. Now you might see that it's going to froth a little bit as you add it. Now that it's thoroughly mixed together, I'm going to start putting on the heat, and I'm going to let it warm up very, very gently and keep stirring. We're cooking our egg yolks, and we're going to go very, very slowly and carefully so that the eggs don't curdle. Cooking is an art that engages all of your senses. Obviously, there is your sense of smell and your sense of taste and the sight and even the sound of something sizzling, but also there's your sense of feeling. When you're moving your wooden spoon inside your custard, you're going to feel it going from something quite liquid to something thickening, which is why you need to stir it constantly. It's going to take about 10 minutes, and you want to feel your custard thickening as you go. And if you go slowly and carefully, it's not going to curdle. Now I've been stirring for a good 10 minutes, and I think you can see there's some little bubbles that are appearing around the side of the pan. So that tells me to take it off the heat because it's ready. And even though it's very subtle, and as I said, I can feel it, you can also see that the back of the wooden spoon is coated. It's not very thick, but it is slightly coated. It's not all running off. So now it's ready. And the last thing I'm going to do is add a tablespoon of liqueur and swirl that in off the heat. Now once you've made your sabayon, you can actually just leave it for a while. You don't have to do anything with it until it's time to serve dessert, which is a little known fact perhaps. You can even leave it overnight in the fridge if you want to. Now I'm going to do a sabayon aux fruits rouges, which obviously is custard poured over red fruit. And for this I used frozen berries, which I thawed overnight. I thawed them in a colander over a dish so that all the drips are caught underneath. And this is a bag of frozen fruit that I picked up at Trader Joe's. It's a mixture of cherries and berries. Yummy. And the advantage of using frozen fruit is that none of it is bruised and none of it's gone mushy, none of it's gone moldy. It's all rather good quality. If it's in season, you can use peaches or nectarines, or you can just have a natural sabayon. So let's pour the custard over the fruit, and meanwhile I have my broiler on very high, and I'm just going to pass the tray under a broiler for a couple of minutes to get a lovely caramelized top.
That's good the way you do it there. That's perfect.
Remember, if you're going to put any individual dishes under a broiler or in the oven, it's much easier to set them out on a tray first of all, and then you can just put them in and then take them out again without any tipping or losing any ingredients on the way. Now I'm not fully closing the door. I'm just going to leave those dishes under the broiler for a couple of minutes, and I'm not going to go anywhere while they're under there. I want to keep an eye on them. So now we're going to finish off the sauce. Now remember, we've had the tomatoes and the wine and the garlic flavored oil simmering away, and to this we're going to add the gorgonzola, and the gorgonzola is actually going to sort of melt into the sauce, and those bits of blue there, they're going to stay like lumps, which is why when we were in that inn in Italy we thought it was little bits of ground veal or something like that. Whoops, there we go. And then that's just going to melt into the sauce there. Now if you can imagine having a bite of gorgonzola and a little bit of red wine after that, that's the mouth taste that you're going to have when you have this sauce. Wine and cheese together, yum. And it melts really fast, as you can see. Okay, While that's melting, I'm going to add a little bit of red pepper, these red pepper flakes. Hop. Not too much, a little bit more if you like things a little on the spicy side. I don't, I just like to have that tiny little kick, nothing more. There we go, just turn up the heat a little bit. Now the pasta, we didn't completely cook, so I'm going to add the pasta to the sauce and about a ladleful of the pasta water, which is going to add some flavour and a little bit of liquid to the sauce. So essentially what you're doing is finishing off cooking the pasta within the sauce, and then the pasta, each strand of pasta is going to absorb all those flavors of the sauce. And no Italian cook is ever going to throw out the pasta sauce until they're really finished cooking the meal, because you can always use that extra water if your sauce is a little on the thick side. And then very importantly, you're going to mix together the pasta with the sauce. So here we have our saucisson sec with cornichon, or our Trader Joe's sausage with little cornichon and some nuts. We have a yummy green salad with a shallot vinaigrette. Let me just add a little of this vinaigrette now to the salad, and we can toss that together. And then we have our spaghetti with the Gorgonzola sauce, and it smells absolutely out of this world. I'm just going to transfer a little bit to my dish. Really, really yummy. And for my dessert, this wonderful sabayon with red fruit, which smells pretty boozy and therefore rather yummy. And I think you're going to be very proud of yourself if you invite your friends over and present them with this feast, and they're going to have a great time. So cheers. Thank you for watching. This was the European Palette, and I'm Liz Hocharik saying goodbye. For today's recipes, go to www.auberginesetc.com and click on the European Palette link.